4% of the companies out there are going to need us. That means 96% of the companies out there don't need us. What they're trying to do is vector in on that ace of spades. It's out there, but you know what happens? And this is why we make marketing calls and have forever. They change by being on the phone. You'll find the next ace of spades. It's just such a big problem is working, can't help job orders as search assignment quality job orders and not knowing the difference.
Welcome back to Talent Hunters, where we explore insights and trends shaping the global recruiting and staffing industry. Want to build talented teams that drive your company toward big goals and big growth? Then this podcast is for you. And now, let's join the conversation with today's episode of Talent Hunters, brought to you by HireQuest. Connect with us at hirequest.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Vince Holt, and I'm the host of Talent Hunters. It is my honor and pleasure to have Bob Marshall, the CEO of the Bob Marshall Group and founder of the Marshall Plan, with us today. With over 44 years in the professional recruiting world, starting way back in the covered wagon days with management recruiters, and continuing for over 35 years training and influencing owners and AEs on how to do this business the right way. Bob also recently authored a book titled The Phone Rang. It really is a playbook for business success in our world. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you. Appreciate the introduction.
Well, appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule and spending it here with us today. The first question I've got, Bob, is relatively easy, but I don't want you to hold back. What has changed fundamentally in what recruiters should be doing in the last 44 years?
Gosh, I mean, the thing that sticks out the most, that hits you right off the top, is the technology. When we started back in 1980, at least that's when I started in beautiful Reno, Nevada, there just wasn't technology. I mean, we had LaBelle projectors. We didn't even have fax machines when we started. We had no computers. It was just focusing on picking up the telephone, talking into the telephone, using source materials, visiting the reference library to talk to the reference librarian who could point you in the right direction on how to use a library. It was just so rudimentary from a technical point of view. Now, and I'm not saying this is necessarily all good, but now we are hit so much and so heavily every day with technology that it's really hard to concentrate. That if it's not LinkedIn or something that's on the internet, it's artificial intelligence, which changes every week, it seems like. And so what I noticed a challenge from my point of view as a coach and a trainer is to keep my people focused on being on the phone, because that still works, talking to people, using the technology. I'm definitely not anti-technology. So using the technology where you can use it, how you can use it, but keep in mind that, as the big billers will all tell us, the key to our success is picking up the instrument and talking into it. That's always the key. In fact, I just talked to a big biller this morning who called me out of the blue from Minnesota, and he had just bought my book, and they're all very complimentary. He's in his 70s. He was a big biller for MRI up in Minnesota, had retired at 70, and now he wanted to come back to be a recruiter again. He wanted to have another $1 million operation like he had before. I'll leave his name out because I haven't asked him if I could do it. But one of the things he said to me in our conversation towards the end, he said, Bob, I know the basics, and I know the key is still the key, and that is picking up the instrument and talking into it. And he's making, and he's an old codger, he's probably 40 or 50 calls a morning to establish his niche again and making those connections. Because as you and I both know, Vince, and I've talked about it forever, and big billers tell us this, because that's what I share is big biller stuff, 4% of the companies out there are going to need us. That means 96% of the companies out there don't need us. So the key and the $54,000 question is, how do we focus in or vector in on the ones that need us, that 4%. And that is, and it still is, and use technology where you can. I'm okay with all that, but it still is picking up the phone and talking into it and using the technology wisely and not as an obstacle or not as a replacement for what we know works. Use it with it, add it to it. Like Vince Lombardi used to say in the old days, the key in football and why you win football game is blocking and tackling. That's how you win football games. Well, in recruiting, it's marketing and recruiting. It's just that simple. Now, there's other things involved in that, but as long as you're on the phone marketing, you're on the phone recruiting, and you're doing the other things as well, you'll be fine. So I guess kind of a long-winded answer to that question, but that's what I notice has changed so dramatically from my days in 1980 to nowadays where you and I are doing a Zoom call. We're doing a podcast. I see you, you see me. We're on opposite sides of the country. I mean, it's changed so much from that angle. Anyway, that would be my kind of short and long answer.
I love what you said, because what's changed really hasn't changed. The research has changed. But to your point, it's a lot easier to consume a lot of research today as opposed to what it was 40 years ago because of the technology, which the secret is, and you profoundly said it, was get on the damn telephone. Because people are going to do business with people they trust. Trust is built by interaction. You got to prove your trust to people. I love what you said. I mean, you're so right. I got to experience in my first few years the introduction to the fax machine, because that was going to put us out of business. You remember those days. The fax machine was going to put us out of business. Then the computer was going to put us out of business. Now AI is going to put us out of business. The common denominator is everything electronic has been going to put us out of business. But to your words, what I think is very, very profound, the thing that will keep us in business is the same thing that we used when you started in 80, I started in the mid-80s, the telephone. Market a candidate, search on a job order. And unfortunately, there's just so many people today that are using technology because they think it makes it easier to contact people. There are things about technology that I believe, and you concurred, that it does make it easier to do the research. You can, in occasion, make warmer calls because of technology, but make the doggone phone call. So if you were managing, doesn't make any difference, 2 people, 10 people today, what would be your line in the sand in what they're doing during the business day? What are you coaching your people to do? What would you coach your people to do and hold them accountable to?
Boy, so many things. I flash right away on marketing because I know that that's a key. And vectoring in on that 4% of the people that are going to need our services and avoid the 96% that are not. And so I guess it's giving the people a strong foundation. I'm still a believer in the MPC, but I train people that don't like the MPC. I don't really care. I don't get paid every time somebody uses an MPC to make a presentation. I know why it works. And it's worked historically. I get all that part. But I guess the beginning is making sure that people are comfortable with what they're doing and they like what they're doing. Because, Vince, whatever we like, we'll do. And if we don't like it, we won't do it. 9/10 of our brain, when I teach neurolinguistic programming, the elegant reports through elegant communication, 9/10 of your brain is subconscious. 1/10 is conscious. 9/10 of your brain will do what you tell it to do if it likes it. If you don't like it, 1/10 will argue, yeah, we got to do it or else I'll get fired by my manager. But the other 9/10 will say, gosh, Vince, this getting on the phone doesn't work. Let me organize my desk. Let me do some research on LinkedIn. Let me anything I can do so when you come to my desk, I don't get fired. And that's your subconscious trying to fight what we know is important. So sometimes I use the analogy. I've heard it from Mark, a friend of mine over in Scotland, another coach. And he talked about the deck of cards analogy. And I always loved this analogy. And I don't know where he came up with it, where from, but it's a good analogy. And that is, keep in mind, recruiters, that when you go out into the marketplace, you're trying to vector in on 4% of the niche that will use your services. So think of it as a deck of cards. You have 52 cards. There's a bunch of numbered cards. Those are companies, examples of companies that are never going to use you. Now call them, we're going to recycle. Your desk is a manufacturing plant. We will recycle these. But keep in mind, the numbered cards, you're probably not going to place. That's not a high hit rate there. But then there are face cards. Now, King, Queen, Jack, you'll place with them. Not all the time, but with some regularity. And so we want to vector in on those. But you know what? There are 4 aces. And aces are the ones that are going to need your services over and over again. And that represents the 4% that I'm talking about. But of those aces, there's one ace of spades. And that's the one you want. That's the one that you will develop into a key account. I use the example with me of IGT, International Game Technology. They make video slot machines. They're the second largest producer, at least they were, with Bally's being the heaviest producer. They just happen to be located in Reno, one of my key accounts. They made me rich one year. They were the ace of spades for me. It was wonderful. The next year, I'm thinking they're going to make me rich again the next year, right? I went to them all the time. I spent an inordinate amount of time on the phone with them and visiting them. They loved Bob Marshall. They thought I was the neatest guy. You know how many people I placed with them that second year? 0. Not one. Because they changed. So what I want to tell my new people, to answer your point there, is just keep in mind, the reason you're marketing, because you're going to think it's weird or it's not effective, or maybe in the old days it worked, but it doesn't work now. What you're trying to do is vector in on that ace of spades. It's out there, but you know what happens? And this is why we make marketing calls and have forever. They change. So the ace of spades this year may not be the ace of spades next year. But you know what? By being on the phone, you'll find the next ace of spades. They're out there. And I always say to my people, 4% of the companies out there need you and me and Vince, all of us. But we don't know who they are. And the way we're going to find that out is to be on the phone, making marketing calls, and leaving scintillating presentations. And that's the fab and all different things we can talk about. But that's why the MPC works. That's why the feature accomplishment benefit presentation works, is to leave good messages, let them know you're out there, and then stay as much as possible away from the 96% that are going to waste your time. Not every job order is created equal. And keep that in mind. So when you're out there, we know qualifier job order techniques. We'll qualify the job order, but we're looking for that ace of spades, and sometimes they fool us. And you haven't asked me this yet, but I think the biggest problem we have in recruiting is not artificial intelligence and not technology and not the mean manager or anything like that. I think the number one problem we have that I've noticed over my 45 years in this business is working can't help job orders as search assignment quality job orders and not knowing the difference. We're so focused on the job order that when we get one, we're so ecstatic that we don't have to make marketing calls anymore, that we jump on this and we do what? Recruiting. Why? Because it's more fun. I'd rather recruit, but you're recruiting on a job order you're never going to fill, or it's going to be remotely that you're going to fill it. So when people say, well, what is the big problem with recruiting? I always come back. I know they probably want me to talk about it's so difficult to find candidates. And well, it is if it's a crummy job order. And so if you're getting crummy job orders and you're jumping off marketing because it's so much fun to recruit, there's your problem. And I noticed that, Vince, more than I care to discuss. It's just such a big problem, is working can't help job orders as search assignment quality job orders and not knowing the difference. And it's tough. And that's why you have a manager. That's why you go to Vince or you come to me and you say, I don't know. Is this a search assignment quality? Is it a matching, like a POJOable job order? Is it a can help? I don't know. But the thing is, it'll change. And my job as your manager is to make sure you don't get all lost in the woods working on a job order you're never going to fill, or some kind of purple squirrel job order that's so difficult that no one can fill it, and focus back on marketing and back on finding that ace of spades, because that ace of spades is out there. Anyway,
So
that's
I'm coming to you. I'm an AE. I'm coming to you, my manager. I've been desperate, and I just took a job order and can't wait to get it started. So what are the 5 direct questions you're going to ask me, AE, to qualify whether or not I did my job taking that job order?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's good, there. In fact, I was just talking to that man this morning about the 6 points that I'm looking for on every job order, and to make sure it is a good job order, it's a workable job order. But one, obviously the salary and fee. One of the major things I want to make sure there is, did you cover the salary and fee, hypothetically, and will they pay it? And am I talking to the right person? So make sure it is a searchable job order, not that something you have to get back on. Find out if they fit into one of 3 categories. If they have a sense of urgency, I need a drop dead date. I want to ask, when is the last day you can, and this is what I'll ask my recruiter, did you ask the hiring manager, when is the last day they can go, so that something bad happens the next day because it's not filled, i.e., what is your drop dead date? Now, keep in mind, most of the hiring managers won't have one. That's okay. We're just trying to determine urgency. Secondly, another category I'm looking for is this a difficult position to fill? Are you like the court of last resort? That's okay. It shouldn't be impossible, but it should be difficult. That's why you get paid so much. So make sure that it is a difficult to fill position. And finally, the third kind of company in the 4%ers are progressive companies. I had one called WR Grace that wanted to be kept abreast of top-notch talent as I surfaced that down. And so that was great for me to have them. So that's it. Your job order, Miss Recruiter, does it fit into one of those 3 categories? Does it have a sense of urgency? Is it a difficult position and you're like the court of last resort to fill? Or is it a progressive company? Okay, they answer that. Next, I'm going to say, okay, then I want to did you ask the person you're taking the job order from who they'd like for this position? Because no recruiter asks that question. And we're trying to separate you from everybody else. So that you're in the niche, you do information security, let's say, and you say, so this is what I do. I'm out there and I can uncover these people for you. My question for you, Mr. Hiring Authority, is who do you want? Sometimes I get the nickname of headhunter. I'm asking for a head to hunt. Who would that be? Well, gosh, Ron Sabo would be great, but you'll never get him. Okay, well, where's Ron? San Diego girl? What's his phone number? Okay, then if they can't answer that question, which is fine, the next question is, which companies or which of your competitors do you respect and want someone from? I need to know that as well. Yeah, I know who your competitors are. I'm in your niche every day, but IGT didn't want to hire people from Bally's. So if I went to Bally's, that wouldn't work. So I need to know which companies that's the quote. Which companies or which of your competitors do you respect and want someone from? IGT, for instance, loved people out of Hewlett Packard because of their quality. They loved them. So that was some place that was one of the places I would go. And what industry, the third question be, what industry would you like these people from? So that's the next thing I'm going to ask if you did that. And then finally, I'm going to ask you, okay, did you explain to the hiring manager what you do for a living as a recruiter? I.e., you go out and you find people that are happy, well appreciated, making good money, currently working, and you entice them to move for a better opportunity. So, Mr. Hiring Manager, did you ask the hiring manager this question? How do I sell it? How do I sell this position? What caused you to come to this position? I need to, because you see, Mr. Hiring Authority, I'm not going to go on. I'll use LinkedIn. I'll use artificial intelligence. I'll use all the tools at my desk. But I need to know how to sell it to someone who's currently working. Because you see, as a recruiter, I'm going to present you somebody who's happy, well appreciated, making good money, currently working, and I'm going to entice them to move for a better opportunity. So my question is, how do I entice them? How do I sell it? Now, if they come back to me and they say, oh gosh, Bob, it's kind of a vanilla position. Well, I remember Dan, one of my favorite guys that I quote a lot. Dan used to say, when they say it's kind of a vanilla, any good engineer will do. Well, here's the problem. I don't work vanilla positions. I work chocolate. I work Neapolitan. I work different flavors. You got to tell me how to sell it. Well, Bob, it's really, there's nothing to it. It's just kind of just a general engineering job. I can't take it then. You're not giving me anything to go out there and entice people to sell. Now, if you're just looking for candidate flow or you're looking for resumes, go on LinkedIn. It's an open source. You can do that yourself. And often I have told hiring managers, you know what? And you say, I'm kind of expensive at 30% of realistic first-year earnings or whatever I charge. You're right. Because you're looking for candidate flow. You're looking for resume flow. You don't need me. You need me when you have urgency, when you have a difficult position to fill, when you're a progressive company. That's when you need me. And then my fee is way worth it. If you're just looking for resumes on LinkedIn, go to LinkedIn. You can do that yourself. You don't need me. And you're right. I am too expensive. But if you're in one of those three categories and you can give me how to sell the position, I am worth my weight in gold. That's when you really want to talk to me.
I love this.
I am key there.
I love this. Well done. Well presented.
So,
today's complaint from AEs is, well, I can't get a hold of anybody. Of course, it's the same complaint you and I had back 40 years ago because we had gatekeepers, we had everything. Now we got technology, caller ID, all this stuff. But people they're complaining that they can't get a hold of people. With what we know today, and you encapsulated it eloquently a few minutes ago, we need to leave messages. Bob, so many people want to leave a story as a message. And fact is, a 10-second message, maybe 15-second message, is really maxing out somebody's listening skills on the other end. What would you suggest to get a hiring authority's attention to call you back? What kind of message would you leave?
As far as the message, and you're right. We have to leave messages, obviously a lot of voicemail. And so I would use an MPC. I would do what we call a feature accomplishment benefit presentation on the MPC. And I would sound something like, John, this is Bob Marshall. I work with your niche. I understand that you're not there now. The reason I called is I have just recruited a top-notch engineering manager who last year with their current company turned it around and increased sales by 50% or efficiency by 50%. And there's no reason why this kind of person couldn't do something like that for a company like yours. So this is what I did. I looked in my niche. I identified you as one that I would like to talk to, along with Hamilton and Lynch and a couple of other companies. Now, I'm going to mention a couple of their competitors. This is the power of competition and the fear of loss. This is basic negotiating technique. But I wanted to call you first, Mr. Hiring Authority, because I think you would be a great match for this person. So this is what I've done. And this is from Dan again. I have arranged, those three words are important. I have arranged for them to be available to talk to interested parties next Monday or Tuesday. And I called to see if that could work for you, and I could give you some more information. And also to give you a little bit more information about this person, number one. Number two, since I was going to be on the phone with you anyway, I wanted to find out, since I'm in your niche, information security, it's what you do, what I do. So my other question for you is, what kind of people would you like to hear about? Should I uncover them in a subsequent search in my niche? And that's basically it. So my number is 770-898-5550. You can reach me usually in the early afternoon. And looking forward to talking to you. Hope you have a great day, and talk to you down the road. Click. So what I'm trying to do there is I'll do a quick, because you're right, you don't want to make a long presentation, a quick fab presentation, edit it as much as possible. I'm going to ask for action, because I think action is important. I have them arranged. And those 3 words, by the way, are super powerful. I have arranged. I have arranged for them to be available to talk to interested parties next week, Monday or Tuesday. And then I think something that you have to be a little gutsy about doing, I'm going to call Lynch and I'm going to call Hamilton, 2 of your competitors, but I really wanted to call you first. There's the power of competition and the fear of loss. And then the last thing, and I think, Vince, it's so important when people start a marketing campaign, because as you and I both know, you're going to leave a lot of messages. I know that. So leave good messages, leave scintillating messages, not 10-minute messages like you said, but to the point. But it's that lost sale close that I like so much. And the lost sale close at the end, you're not selling anymore. You're raising the white flag. I give up. And my question is, what kind of people would you like to hear about? Should I uncover them in a subsequent search? And that's the exact quote. If you leave that quote, I promise you, you will get callbacks. And they'll say to you, and that's the big complaint about an MPC, right? Is how do I know if they need the MPC? Well, that's not the point. You're engaging them in conversation. You're getting to the 2 to 4 minute magic window where rapport is being established, where they like, believe, trust, and understand you, those 4 elements of rapport. But the key, and what I always want my guys to do, men and women that are out there marketing for the first time, a long time or ever, is make sure you leave that lost sale close. What kind of person would you like to hear about? Should I uncover them in a subsequent search? And I can't tell you, Vince, how many times in my life people have called me and said, they know I'm a recruiter. And I left that message, and they called me back, and they told me 3 different positions they had. Why wouldn't they just call me, initiate the call, or tell me when I first asked? Because people don't do that unless you ask for it. So the lost sale close, if you're marketing any new person, I would recommend it. Just make sure you follow up at the very end, and it's just short. What kind of people would you like to hear about? Should I uncover them in a subsequent search? And you know what? If they don't call you back, they don't need anybody. Then they're the numbered cards. And they're the ones you shouldn't be calling anyway. Don't worry about it. So if they don't call you back, that's the answer. You got your answer. They don't need you. And sometimes people say to me, gosh, Bob, I made 50 calls and nobody called me back. So you learned 50 ways of, like, what was it? Thomas Edison, he learned 1,000 ways on not to make a light bulb because they all failed. Well, what you're finding is people that don't need you. Now, maybe it takes some time. Maybe you're calling the wrong person. That's okay. Because what we're going to do is we're going to recycle any of those. If you guys have heard your desk is a manufacturing plant, we're going to recycle these guys. And that's where the 1,500, sometimes I get criticized by saying the marketplace is too big that I recommend. But what I'm saying is if you could do, like I said to the guy this morning in Minneapolis or Minnesota, if you could do 25 calls a day, that's not a lot, and that most of those are messages. If you did 25 a day, that'd be 125 a week, 500 a month, 1,500 a quarter. That's where that number comes from. It's not a magic number, but it's however many numbers you can get out there and touch these people. And there's something called a marketing waterfall that we probably don't have time to get into now, but part of the marketing waterfall is you're going to touch them different ways. Yes, you're going to call them. That's the first way. That's the best way. You're going to leave them a text message, maybe. You're going to leave them an email message, maybe. But you're going to touch them each month. So 12 times a year, you're going to touch them. Now, I don't want to be calling people every month because I'm a pest then. But so the second month, I might leave them an email. Maybe I'll leave them a podcast invitation like this. Something like that. But those are the things that I want to do as I touch them, and then I can be branded in my niche. So that's where that comes from, is making sure you touch them and then getting through. And I promise you, I keep coming back to this. I sound like a politician. But if you do this stuff, there are 4% out there that need you and me right now. And we're just not calling them. They're there. And if you leave a good message, the MPC, MRI, I know, of course, Vince and I both have feelings for them because that's how we both started. But it worked. That's so, people that say, oh, the MPC does this. It's like saying, I have a chicken who wants to buy a chicken. No, you're missing the point. The point of an MPC is to engage the other side in conversation, let them know the quality of the candidates you can bring to bear, get to that magic 2 to 4 minute window where rapport is being established, and then follow with the lost sale close. What kind of person would you like to hear about? Should I cover them in the subsequent search? You'll find them. I promise you. They're not all going to be great job orders. That's why you have Vince and me. that's when you come to us, and then we help you to determine, is this a good job order or not? But they're there, and if you can get out there, and even this old timer that I talked to today that did $1 million, he was a member of the Pinnacle Society, all that kind of stuff. And he said, I didn't say it to him. He said it to me. He said, the key is still getting on the phone and talking into it. It is. It really is. Anyway.
So you authored a book.
Yes, sir. I did. Yes.
and you know what I found as I read that book, and I know of an office that used it part of a book club within their office, and they took a chapter every week and discussed it. And to our audience out there, I would recommend every recruiter, every owner of recruiting, get a hold of this book, The Phone Rang by Bob Marshall, because it breaks down our business to the basic fundamentals. It truly teaches you how to be successful if you will commit to it. Now, several times you've brought up, which I think is the holy grail of recruiting, and that is your desk as a manufacturing plant. In the Reader's Digest form, explain what that means in our world.
Reader's Digest form, huh? Yes, it's a big one. That's a big one. Yes, your desk is a manufacturing plant. Well, it came years ago. It came from a bunch of us coaches talking to one another and complaining that we all teach it basically the same, but everybody seems to be doing something different on a desk. And we said, there should be an analogy that we could use to explain what you do on a desk so that you would understand it. And that just happened to take off. And it was, I wish I'd have invented it, but it changed over time. And the idea behind your desk as a manufacturing plant is you come into an office, you get Vince Holt, you have an interview with him, and he hires you and you decide to go to work. So you are now your own general manager of your desk. Now you're going to run that desk like a manufacturing plant, so you need people to help you. You're going to need a manufacturing manager. It's going to be the guy that's out there making the marketing calls. You're going to need a sales manager. You're going to need a quality control manager. You're going to need an accountant. So those are the 5 people that we need. And you're all 5. And interestingly enough, I've used this over time. When people are failing in an office, I look for those 5 characters because usually they're not you're not doing everything wrong. Maybe you just are not marketing enough. Maybe it's your manufacturing manager that needs to be changed. Maybe your QC manager is great, but there's no job orders coming down the assembly line. There's nothing for that guy to do. Or maybe your sales manager, the guy that arranges interviews, he's great, but there's no job orders. There's no candidates. So you notice that when something fails, it's usually one of those 5, and we can fix that. It also allowed us to talk about the different quality of job orders. When I started, every job order was great, and every candidate was great. I mean, that's just how we're trained. Well, we come to find out that's not true. And Dan Bolin, the Dan that I mentioned, he's the first one that told me about this. He was great. He was up in Boise for a while, then down in California. Anyway, he would say, when I write a job order, now this is a great recruiter, keep in mind. When I write a job order, out of 15 that I write, and he's really good, 0 to 1 will be search assignment quality. About 4 to 5 will be matching, or in the old days, we called them POJOable, presentation on existing job order, type job orders, matching job orders. About 4 or 5 are those. And about 10 or 2/3 are can't helps. Won't pay full fee, can't get them on the phone, unrealistic job, whatever it is, it's probably a can't help. And so what Dan said is, I need to know that. And the same thing, by the way, with candidates. 0 to 1, 1 to 2 out of 15 candidates will be MPCs. 3 to 4 to 5, maybe it'll be matching. Not MPC quality, but still good. And then about 10 or 2/3 will be can't help. So he divided it that way, and we did that on your desk as a manufacturing plant. Then we thought, well, these can't helps, don't just disappear. They change over time, right? So we're going to build 2 recycling plants on either side, and we're going to recycle those job orders periodically and recycle those candidates periodically and see if we can't turn them into the higher level. The candidate that wouldn't commute 5 miles now will commute 105 miles because he can't make his mortgage payment. He can't go to the grocery store. So now it's changed. So we put in the recycling thing, and then we talked about recycling those people and putting them in and seeing if we can change them. And then the final thing, the Reader's Digest version, those are the people that know what a Reader's Digest is, the quick and dirty explanation of your desk as a manufacturing plant is at the very bottom, and that is the product. And everybody thinks it's a placement. It's not. It's a decision, because you don't get yeses all the time. So the very bottom of the manufacturing plant is you put the job orders together, the candidates together, you mix them and match them, and then you get send-outs. And then from the send-out, you get a decision. And the decision is yes, no, or another interview. Those are your 3 choices. And that's the final product of your manufacturing plant. And I noticed when I was in with offices that had big billers, let's say, they celebrate their no's. If they get a no, and Dan said this once to me, he said, my ratio of send out first to placement is 8-1. Now, some of us might look at that, send out first to placement. That's not very good. That means you got to have 8 send outs before you get a placement. But Dan said no. But it's because people hire for weird reasons in America, probably around the world. And so the 8-1 is just a ratio that I operate from. But what that means to me is if I get 8 send outs in a week, I'll make a placement every week. If I make a placement every week, I'll make 52 placements in a year. If my average fee is $25,000, I'm $1 million biller. And guess what? Dan was $1 million biller. The big billers understood the numbers. They got the numbers to work for them. And so every time Dan got a no, his ratio just went from 8-1 to 7-1. And he celebrated it. And when he got another no, it went to 6-1 and 5-1. And then eventually 1-1, made a placement, get on to the next week. So that's in a short encapsulated version of your desk as a manufacturing plant. There's more to it than that, obviously, but that's the down and dirty of why it works so well. And believe me, I've been asked by more people over the years to do your desk as a manufacturing plant. I've tried to change it. I've tried to call it your desk as a call center. I've tried to update it, but everybody comes back to, it's not only that one, but there's another one called inverted cones, where you work on your how to develop a specialization. Those 2 seem to resonate with more people than any of the presentations that I do. So it works.
So, Bob, I mean, believe it or not, our audience needs to know that subject matter takes a very, very small part of that book, and people should really pay attention to this book. Bob, how can people get a hold of you? Please slowly lay it out, email, whatever it is. How can people in our audience get a hold of you?
There's the book again that Vince held up. Phone number, because I just talked about phone number, 770-898-5550. You can always call me, like that man did this morning from Minnesota rather, and wanted to talk. And he had bought the book. He loved the book. He's an author himself, actually. You can get me on my website, www.themarshallplan.org. It's a .org. And then, see if I just read a little business card. Oops. Oh, there it is. And watch my hand be over. Bob at themarshallplan.org. And that's my email, Bob at themarshallplan.org, O-R-G. I thought it was cute. The Marshall Plan in Europe, bringing Europe back after World War II. That's where it came from. Anyway, those are the ways to get me. And I'm open with, like I've been here with Vince and you guys, I'm open with sharing information. This book actually started with, there's a man that is featured in the book called David Thaler. He was my $1 million person. He came to me out of the blue. Paul Hawkinson, past editor of the Fordyce Letter, recommended he called me. David wanted to bill $1 million in a year, and he asked me if I could help him. I really didn't like to take on students like that because it's too much work, frankly, and I'm probably too lazy to do it. But I liked David, and he had all the right qualities. And I told him a couple of things. I said, number one, I'm going to share with you all good stuff. I promise you. I'm not going to fib to you. I'll give you honest answers and tell you how to do it, but you can't argue with me, because that's just going to waste my time. And I've been in so many where people say to me, well, Bob, that's great, but let me tell you how I would like to do it. And it's like, well, then why are you engaging me? If you know how to do it, then you don't need me. But David said he would do it over time. And in the year that we worked together, and David was very honest, very straightforward. His story is in here. He built $1 million, and it was incredible even to me, and I'm teaching him. And I remember bragging to my wife about it. I said, I taught David how to build $1 million. And she said, well, why don't you teach yourself to do $1 million? And then you wouldn't have to train so much anymore. And then you'd have to get these books out. But I'm a better teacher than I am a recruiter, even though I have built over $1 million, not in 1 year. Anyway, David said to me, you're getting older. And I said, yeah, unfortunately. And he said, and all the stuff you have in your office, you're seeing it behind me and all this stuff. If you check out, no one's going to benefit from this stuff. So, and it's probably later than you think. That's what, one of the seminal sales books that I'd encourage all you guys to read by Frank Bettger, Bettger, called How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Sales. Great book, seminal book. It was written back in the 1920s, old book, but it's really got a bunch of good stuff. Well, one of the things Frank says at the back of his book is it's getting later than you think. And don't wait for stuff. So every time I got David on the phone, he would say, okay, Bob, how many chapters did you write today? And writing a book, or any of you that have tried to do it or wanted to do it, is hard work. And editing is about the worst thing I've ever come across. Just going over the same stuff over and over again. But this came from David. And I thanked him at the beginning, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have done it.
Bob, I want to thank you so very, very much. I really want to thank you for taking the time today. Between you and Danny Cahill, as far as I'm concerned, there's no better trainers. And I really, really value the information that you share with everybody, because it really is the profound basics to be successful. Thank you again.